Hello everybody in YouTube land and welcome to an exciting Arkham Horror List video. So this video idea came from someone who commented on one of our recent videos where we were talking about power level on cards. And they said that yes, I do not disagree with what you're saying here in terms of this video, because you're right. When you have the whole card pool to look at, power level is, you know, like it's pretty easy to gauge the cards because of that. But then they were like, but what if there was a video where you talked about just expansions in terms of core set? So like if this was your first expansion that you picked up, how impactful would the entire player card expansion be? So what I'm doing is that today we're going to be breaking down first the Dunwich Legacy Investigator expansion. We're not going to be talking about the Investigators, we're talking about specifically the player cards, because the secret is Investigators always make an impact. Even if you are playing the likes of Jim Culver, you have a new Investigator to play, you have new cards to explore, you're going to discover some things about the game. Investigators are always impactful, right? It's talking about the actual specific player cards. So today we're going to be talking about these cards with only the core set in mind, right? If you do not, if you don't expect me to talk about things from like Path to Carcosa or how this card fits into this elaborate combo deck, we're going to be talking about just bare bones, how this card can impact your collection and impact your play with just this and the core set in mind. Generally, as you get more cards, you'll find that there's going to be more opportunities that are going to open for these cards. But when you just have the core set and like Dunwich in this example, it's going to be more limiting compared to other things. And we're kind of just looking at cards in like a pure value standpoint and how beneficial they're going to be. I'm not going to be talking about, I'm not going to be showing the cards from the core set that I mentioned here, that I do mention here in great detail. I highly recommend, if you're a new player and you have your core set, have it open on ARKHAM DB. I'll have a, maybe I'll put a link to the core set cards in ARKHAM DB. I mean, maybe I can even actually open one here. That's not a bad idea, that we can bounce between the two if the time comes. But also just have the, have it open, have the core set open in front of you and look at your cards and kind of just the best way to, the best way to learn and internalize is by learning, looking at the cards and internalizing. That's kind of what it really all comes down to. Okay, so here we go. 1 second, let me just hide this and move this. We might do that today, but I don't know. So yeah, so these are all the revised core set cards, specifically the player cards here. And once again, we're not going to care about the Investigators, but you see, there's a lot of good stuff that. Only player cards. Give me only there. I mean, is there really 116 cards in here, or are they lying? There really are 116 cards. That's crazy. There's weaknesses included. But yeah, there's a lot of cards here that we can do. But for breaking this down, we're going to be stripping it down to just 5 little categories for where we're going to put the card. Which is, first one down at the bottom, won't leave the binder. This card is, I'm basically saying, not playable, and you're going to not really look at playing this card. And you're not going to want to actually sit and pull this out. It's not worth it. This one, next category up, is won't move the needle, but it's playable. So this is a card that is exactly what it says, right? It's not going to do anything crazy. It's not going to be good. You're probably going to cut it, but it is playable and will get the job done in some decks. Good deck slot filler up next is just exactly what it says on the tin. This card is going to just fill a slot in a deck, whether it be to hold over for an experience cards, but that's actually probably these ones are going to do more. And the good deck slot filler is just it might even stay till the end. Strong option for most decks. Now we're cooking. These are cards that are going to perform very well. And then we'll make an immediate impact. These are the strongest cards in the cycle. So we're starting off with Blackjack. This is a level 0 card. Fight. You get +1 fist for this attack. If you perform this attack against an enemy engaged with another Investigator and you fail, you deal no damage. So in the core set, the notable weapon we have is the machete in the Guardian class. There's also the 45 automatic, which is perfectly playable, but in your core set, you'll probably notice that the machete is your most powerful weapon that you have. Blackjack, unfortunately, does not do anything to add to your weapon pool, and Blackjack won't be leaving the binder. The reason for this is pretty simple. If you don't know as a new player, what you're looking for from your weapons is something that deals 2 damage. That is kind of the rate that you want from your weapons, and Blackjack, unfortunately, does not provide that. Up next, we have Taunt. Fast. Play only during your turn. Engage any number of enemies at your location. I think that this one won't move the needle, but is playable. I think this goes up in value when, like, the weapon you're, like, I'm going to be saying this a lot, the weapon that you're fighting with is machete. And I think this goes up for that due to the warding on machete. It's the only enemy that you can be engaged with. So this allows you to snatch up an enemy from another investigator, and then you can start chopping with the machete. The reason why this is, like, it won't move the needle is because the effect is not that great, but it is still playable, and you'll probably still find some uses for it. You're mostly going to be using this to just save on an engage action, which, when you have a smaller collection, isn't terrible, but it's kind of just how it is. Also, like, also pay attention to the icons on all these cards, because if you'll notice that cards with, like, relevant icons are going to go up in value as well, especially because, again, this video is targeted to newer players, so I'm trying to, I don't want to over-explain the cards because we have a lot of cards to talk about, so I'm just kind of like hitting on some various things here. Always look at the icons. I probably won't mention the icons, but, like, for example, this has Fist and a Brain. Fist is really nice because if you're going to be fighting, it gives you a boost, and it gives you some Brain defensive stats as well. Likewise, if it's a Seeker card, if it gives you, like, Foot and Book, that's also a good, like, good symbols book because you can use it actively. Yeah, so Taunt won't move the needle, but I think it is playable. It could leave your binder in most of your decks. Teamwork, this is an interesting one. So 0 cost, it's an event. Investigators at your location may give or trade any number of item assets, ally assets, or resources among one another. I have to take out some of my recent bias for this card because I've been playing this card in a full collection, and it's actually pretty playable in a full collection. However, for a long time when we first started out, we were memeing on Teamwork because it wasn't really that good. When you have a small collection, you don't really want to give your Seeker or your Schizo tool a weapon that they're probably already playing anyway. So I think for when you just get this box, this one won't leave the binder. The reason for this is just because when you have a small collection, everyone is just basically taking the scraps that they need. There's no, like, building some sort of weird combo that you can do, or, like, some sort of, like, incredible payoff. And, like, I see someone in chat saying it lets you take the untabooed Milan money from your Seeker. I'm sorry to say this, but in Dunwich, the Seeker is using that money for better things. So that's the thing. The economy that Dr. Milan, if you, of course, that card, Dr. Milan Christopher, what he is providing, you have a card in this cycle that we're going to be doing that's better than Teamworking. It's just like one of those things, because when you have just this cycle, emergency cash is kind of all the economy that you need. There's less, like, player cards that are going to pop off on higher levels, and most of the time, the thought of using this as economy for other players is more advanced than what the card pool actually provides, in my opinion. So we're going to put this one and won't leave the binder, unfortunately. Taunt does have an upgrade. Fast, play only during your turn, engage any number of enemies your location, draw 1 card for each enemy engaged this way. This one, I think, also, like the last one, it won't move the needle, but is entirely playable. The reason why it's, like, it's gonna, like, get to the point where it's gonna like do things is because you have experience in Dunwich and a smaller collection, which means that the cards that you're going to be grabbing are likely you're just like, I have experience, I'm going to use it on this. Dunwich Legacy is, from community sentiment, sentiment, not sediment, from community sentiment, is a lower XP campaign. But we're not talking about that here in kind of this thing because the Investigator expansions are now separate from the campaign expansions. But generally, like, it's a good advice to pick up the Investigator and the campaign at the same time if you're just a new player. So, like, Dunwich is always still, like, a great recommendation for the first one. But yeah, it's lower on experience, so Taunt might make it into your decks, and it's the same kind of thing. It's not going to do too much, but it, at least replacing itself, makes it a little bit softer. On to Laboratory Assistant. 2 cost, soaks for 1 and 2. It's an ally. Your maximum hand size is increased by 2 while checking your hand during the upkeep phase. And after enters play, draw 2 cards. I think I'm going to put this card up in strong option for most decks. I don't think it's on the immediate impact for me. And I think the main reason for that is I think it's very strong now. with a full collection because the cards you draw are generally stronger. But you might be rolling banks and drawing Taunt, for example, right? So it's like one of those things where the impact cards are a little bit softer. It's still very good. Like, card draw is still very good. But there's going to be, we're going to notice what cards are making an immediate impact when they come here. The reason why Laboratory Assistant is good is not so much for the top line, but for the bottom line, where it's just like, it's soak that'll, it's going to enter, draw 2 cards, soak some damage and horror for you, and then, like, go away. So you basically are also preventing, or ward of protectioning, in a way, a Mythos card in the future, or an enemy attack in the future. You're dodging a card as well. Both Ward of Protection and Mythos, those are cards in the core set for you to check out and internalize, because Ward of Protection is going to be a dialogue that a lot of more enfranchised players can just refer to as canceling a card in the Mythos phase. All right, Strange Solution, Unidentified. So these are the research cards, so there's a cycle in most of these expansions, if not all of them, where there is a seeker card that starts at level 0. You can complete a little mini quest, and then you can get research cards, like upgraded versions that are more powerful. The level 0 version is always just like a little bit like awkward because it doesn't actually do anything. Its job is to just fill its space before it is like removed from your deck to upgrade the upgraded versions. So it's always a little bit awkward to talk about. But this one is a test, book 4. If you succeed, discard Strange Solution and draw 2 cards, record in your campaign log that you have identified the solution. I think we're going to just put this one in the good deck slot filler, I think, because it actually is a very playable card, and in Dunwich Legacy, this whole Strange Solution into specifically the Acidic Ichor, when we get to it, is a very powerful thing for you to do as a player. So I'm going to just put this in the good deck slot filler because it is like, the effect on it is pretty alright too, just drawing 2 cards, replacing itself. It commits for a wild. All relevant things that I think this card is just like, it's good at doing what it needs to do, and when you do it, you're going to reap the benefits. It's going to pay dividends when you get the upgraded version. We have Shortcut. This is a 0-cost event. Fast play only during your turn. Choose an investigator location. Move that investigator to a connecting location. This card is going to make an immediate impact. Free move doesn't seem like it's that powerful when you're a new player. But trust me, it is. Being able to move any investigator, whether it be you as the Cluver, or Cluver is the person who gets clues, or your friend, the fighter, or the goon, who to a location to deal with enemies or like move in to hold an enemy for you, so you can move in and get things, is a very powerful effect. And being able to move just like at lightning bolt speed, like fast during your turn, is very nice. Shortcut is still played today. It's played with a full collection, and it's very rarely a wrong inclusion in a deck, so it's going to make an immediate impact for sure. We got Seeking Answers. This is a 1-cost event. Investigate. If you succeed, instead of discovering a clue at your location, discover a clue at a connecting location. I think that this card is like... Notably, this is good with Rex Murphy, the investigator from the cycle, but I think we're just going to put this in the won't move the needle but playable section. It's an effect that's not really like too spicy. However, it is still fine. And again, as I said with Taunt, it actually has like pretty relevant symbols. So like when you have a smaller collection, you're kind of just like putting in cards that are fine. And like that's why these cards are going to like... You're not going to like be like super impressed with them 9 out of 10 times. Even like 19 out of 20 times. You're not going to be like that impressed with them. However, what it does do is it gives you something in your deck that's playable, right? And that 1 time out of 20 or that 1 time out of 10, it's going to be like, oh, this was actually helpful. Again, this works really well with Rex Murphy, the investigator in the box. Rex Murphy is when you investigate, if you succeed by 2 or more, you discover an additional clue at your location, and that works really well with Seeking Answers, because it is an investigate you will be doing that in. But we're not going to worry too much about that. We have Liquid Courage. This is a 1-cost asset. Uses 4 supplies as an action. Spend 1 supply, choose an investigator location, and heal 1 horror. Then that investigator tests Brain 2. If that test succeeds, he or she heals 1 additional horror. If that test fails, he or she discards 1 card at random from his or her hand. I wish they just said like they. Yeah, I do not like the he or she, his or her. I just wish it said if they. Then if that investigator fails, the test succeeds, they heal 1 additional horror. If that test fails, they discard 1 card at random from their hand. So much cleaner. Is the level 2? That's actually a great question. The Seeking Answers. It is. Okay, so you actually have the level 0 version. I think that makes it a little bit more notably playable. Good call, Astute, for the Seeking Answers. If we can just go back to this one. We do have that here, which is kind of nice because I think it's still going to live in this spot, but it's like you can hold it until you get to the next one. Because I think this one is probably like in the good deck slot filler for sure. But yeah. I think Liquid Courage is also kind of the won't move the needle but playable, but it also might be a good deck slot filler depending on how scared you are of horror. I am going to put it in the won't move the needle but playable because, like, actually, let me think on this for a second. Bryn played a lot of this card when we first came out, and it was always impressive. I'm going to actually put it up in the good deck slot filler. I think we're going to put it up here. I think we're going to put it up into the good deck slot filler. And the reason for that is the investigators that come in this cycle, that come in the Dunwich Legacy, they all have a deck building video, a deck building style that's called the Dunwich style of investigating, the Dunwich style deck building. So they get 25 cards of their main class, and then they get 5 level 0 cards from any class. So Liquid Courage, I think, is a good example of a card that can fit in very well there. So I'm going to put this in the good deck slot filler. You couldn't play this in like Jenny Barnes, I think. She comes in the Dunwich Legacy expansion, and she'll make good use of it. She has... Like, most of the time you're not doing this to heal that extra horror. It's just even, like, to heal some horror. If you get the second one, like, that's good. And you can commit your guts to this as well, which you're probably playing with such a limited collection here. But I think that this is going to be... Yeah, it's a good deck slot filler. I think it's definitely... You'll notice it. You'll notice its impact more than these cards, I think. Not that these cards are bad. Like, they're playable. But I think, like, you'll start to, like, once you get here, you're going to start to see bigger success rate for the card. Think on your feet. 1 cost event, fast play when an enemy would spawn your location, immediately move to a connecting location, the enemy still spawns your previous location. This is a good deck slot filler. I think this is a card that is often even overlooked in the current days, but I think it's still very playable. The reason why it's often overlooked is just because cards generally are stronger. But being able to essentially not cancel, but like quote-unquote cancel an enemy that spawns your location and move to a connecting location can actually mean quite a bit. Because there are a lot less enemies that hunt in the Dunwich Legacy campaign expansion than in expansions this day and age. This day and age, a lot of enemies, they just hunt. Like, it's actually more shocking when an enemy doesn't have Hunter. But in Dunwich Legacy, there are a lot of enemies that would just vibe on a location, and you can just, like, leave. You can just say, I'm done with you, don't need to worry about that. So I think that, like, this card is going to become weaker as it goes on, as you get more cards. But when you just open up, if you just have your core set and you open up Dunwich Legacy, this is going to do a lot of things. What this card also does, and this might be a little bit big-brained, is it also acts as another copy of Shortcut. It's not as like versatile because Shortcut can be used on other players. It can be used whenever you want. But if you're able to, as like the Seeker, like if you give this as Rex Murphy and you just move to a location that has clues on it, this is you essentially saved yourself a move, and it's effectively kind of like doing a bad impersonation of Shortcut. I think that over time, as you get more cards, you'll find yourself playing Think on Your Feet less and less, but I think the card is still just a good deck slot filler when you have very little. Double or Nothing. This is a max 1 committed per skill test. Double the difficulty of this test. If this skill test is successful, resolve the effects of the successful skill test twice. Okay, so if you're a new player, you might or might not have heard of this thing called the taboo list. The taboo list is an optional set of rules that you can add to the things that change the text on cards to balance them, so to speak. That's like the quickest explanation for them. This card was forbidden, which means that it is not allowed to be played. This is the only card in ARKHAM Horror the card game that is actually just banned. So you might be thinking, if you're an enfranchised player like me, that this card is going to make an immediate impact. No! No! They banned this card mostly because they couldn't find a solution that didn't close future design space. So it is a card that becomes stronger when you have more things. It's still a very strong option. We're going to be putting it up in the strong option for most decks slot, just because it's not that hard to slam together, especially in Jenny Barnes, a test that you're going to succeed by enough to get the extra damage, maybe with her gun, maybe with a vicious blow, get an extra clue with a deduction example of those. To like take advantage of it. But for the most part, double or nothing within Dunwich Legacy was actually a pretty fair card, but still a strong card. So we're going to put it up there. When you get to more stuff, it gets even more busted. But basically, as soon as they let you test at 0, double or nothing would become very problematic. Hired Muscle. This is a 1 cost, 1 experience. 3 meat soak, 1 brain soak. You get +1 fist. At the end of the upkeep phase, you must either pay 1 resource or discard Hired Muscle. I'm gonna be real. I don't remember playing this card at all in the Dunwich Legacy box. So if I put this into perspective, this is, I think, the first time we even considered playing this was when Leo Anderson came out. Because the thing is that the Investigator, the ally that most rogues played at this point was Leo DeLuca, just for that extra action, right? And Skids, like, he could use this, but you also are then sacrificing economy, your resources, to take an extra action to instead just get +1 fist. So I think I'm just going to follow... I think I'm just going to follow this. I don't even think it's... I mean, like, you could play it in Jenny, right? Like, you could play it in Jenny, as Arkham Librarian is saying. To get +1 fist, they only get 1 resource a turn. So you're effectively sacrificing your ability to get... You're sacrificing your ability to get +1 fist, which sounds bad, right? Like, do you think there's an Investigator that would just, like, sacrifice their ability to get +1 fist? I think, like, even then, it's like, it's probably just better to use your money for other... I'm gonna make an executive decision. There's people in chat saying they played this back then, but I think this probably shouldn't leave your binder. I think there's better things you can do in the rogue class, so I'm gonna put this in the won't leave the binder, because... I'm going with my own lived experiences, and we never really played this card to a point that I can remember it. So I'm going to be putting this in the won't leave the binder thing. Because, like, even in Jenny, you're sacrificing your ability to get +1 fist. And I don't think that's worth it. Rite of Seeking? All right. This is going to make an immediate impact. This card, 4-cost asset, takes up the arcane slot, uses 3 charges, action, spend 1 charge, investigate, using brain instead of book. If you succeed, discover 1 additional clue at this location. If a bad symbol is revealed, you lose all remaining actions and test your turn. That seems scarier than it actually is. Oh, there's a squirrel on the tree. That's fun, because you can just do this as your last action. Notably, you also get the level 2 version. So this just means that, like, with Agnes Baker or Jim Culver, you can start getting clues right off the get-go, which is really nice. So I think this card's going to make an immediate impact and give you just some more consistency to your Mystic decks. You can start doing this at level 0, as opposed to awkwardly waiting to buy this level 2 version. Ritual Candles takes up a hand slot as a reaction after a Skull, Cultist, Tablet, or Squid is revealed during a test you're performing. You get +1 skill value for this test. This is a fine deck slot filler. I think it will actually move the needle. You'll, like, pass a test that you otherwise wouldn't. We use this card quite often to fill slots in our decks. The top tier name got borked? Yeah, that's because I have to, like... I change the slide. I use equals and minus to change the slide. So, but yeah, this card we played back in the day, and it is like it fills slots in your deck, and when you play it, it's going to make an impact too. So, very nice card. Clarity of Mind uses 3 charges, spend 1 charge, heal 1 horror for an Investigator location. Now you might be thinking, Justin, this reminds me a lot of this Liquid Courage card you put here. It's not. We're going to put this in the won't leave the binder category. You probably... So I'm not saying you... When I say won't leave the binder, I'm not saying that you won't ever try this card out, right? I'm not saying that this card is like one of those things that as a new player you might never try out, right? What I'm saying is, as a new player, you probably should just skip over Clarity of Mind. This card is not worth it. It is not worth the actions to play it. It is not worth the actions to do it. It's just not. You have to just trust me on this. This is when ARKHAM gets a little bit like strange, where an effect like Liquid Courage can be a good deck slot filler. Part of this is also because like the Rogue card pool was pretty weak in Dunwich and all that. But the other part is that they value healing a little bit more, because this also takes up your arcane slots, which we would rather hold with our Shriveling and our Rite of Seekings up here. So that's kind of like the main reason for it, why this card just kind of lives in the binder when the other stuff should, like, you know, you just play the other things instead. Bind Monster, this is a 3-cost, 2 experience spell. I don't know what this card does on the top of my head, so you know it's probably not going to be great. Evade. This evasion attempt uses brain instead of foot. If you succeed and the enemy is non-elite, evade and attach Bind Monster to it. When the attached enemy would ready, test brain 3. If you succeed, attached enemy does not ready. If you fail, discard Bind Monster. So I see what they were thinking when they designed this, because there's a lot of big enemies in Dunwich Legacy that just have a lot of health. So like I can understand that, but it's so expensive. It costs 3, and odds are you probably just want to shrivel the enemy instead. So I think I'm also going to put this one down here and won't leave the binder. Because, to be honest, I don't remember playing this card, and I played every card in 2023. So, so that's kind of like the state that we're living in for Bind Monster, I find anyway. So, there is a Gug on the card. I do got to give it that. There is a Gug on the card. Gugs are sick as hell. But unfortunately, I think the card is not playable. All right, we go to Fire Axe. This is a 1-cost weapon in the Survivor class. Fight. If you have no resources in your resource pool, this attack deals +1 damage. As a lightning bolt during an attack using Fire Axe, spend 1 resource. You get +2 fist for this skill test. Limit 3 times per attack. This is a card that will make an immediate impact. The main reason for this is you have another weapon that you get to mess around with. And that is really nice because, as I said earlier, you kind of at this point we're just using the machete and the 45 automatic. This now means that as a survivor, you can use other options to start cutting things up with. This is really nice because there's Ashcan Pete, the survivor in Dunwich Legacy, who does a lot. And notably, there's also the Dunwich Investigator deck building, which is you can splash cards, so you could even play this in like Zoe Samaras, for example. This card is still played today. There's a whole archetype built around it that we're going to be seeing later on in this actual very cycle, so like that's pretty cool. My old boyfriend, Peter Sylvester, the big man on campus. You get +1 foot. After your turn ends, heal 1 horror for Peter Sylvester. 1, 2. Yeah, also, Fire Axe is really good for Jenny Barnes, too. Good call. You two broke up? Oh, yeah. But it was we're fine. We still check in on each other. You know, everything's okay between me and Peter. I'm also going to quickly just also talk about the upgraded version here because they're so close. They came out in the actual deluxe expansion when they used to have the old format. But it's one of those things where they all come together now, so you don't need to worry about it. This card, the upgraded version, you now get +1 foot and +1 brain, and he has now 3 horror soak. This card is insane. So I'm going to be putting the level 3 version in the immediate impact, and I'm going to put the level 0 option in the strong option for most decks. The reason why Peter Sylvester is so good, and going back to don't worry about bait and switch. We're not going to talk much about that card. It's kind of just like it's sandwiched between two Mega Bros. So the reason why I upgraded Peter Sylvester is so good is because he increases your defensive stats and he gives you unfathomable horror soak, right? Like he basically means that any sort of treachery card that's going to deal horror to you is now usually on average 66% less scary, because for example, Rotting Remains, it's a card that is going to scare you most of the time you play Arkham Horror, unless you're a Mystic or you have Peter Sylvester in play, where it's test Brain 3. For each point you fail by, take 1 horror. That basically, if Peter Sylvester is looking good as new, like I said, that card is 66% less scary, because now you're only taking, at maximum, 1 horror on your Investigator, and Pete is going to take the other stuff, and it's going to heal away. Pete is a very strong Investigator. He is still played in the majority of Survivor decks today, and he's going to make an immediate impact on your collection. Going back to Barricade, 1 cost, evade if you succeed if the enemy is non-elite. Evade the enemy and move it to a connecting location. So this is a little bit awkward, because in your core set, you have a card called Survival Instinct. And Survival Instinct is just going to outclass Bait and Switch 99% of the time. So we're going to put Bait and Switch down in the won't leave the binder category. Now you might be thinking, this is a lot of cards that are not leaving the binder. It's only 6 compared to the 1,000,000 we have up here. So just don't put into perspective of this. Look at everything else that comes with it. All right. We are now into... No, not yet. We have to go through Kukri first. So Kukri, another weapon option. 2 cost, takes up a hand slot, fight. You get +1 fist for this attack. If you succeed, you may spend 1 additional action to deal +1 damage for this attack. Now, you might be thinking, Justin, this is exactly what you said we wanted earlier. We wanted a weapon that dealt 2 damage. Aha, I got you. You fell right into my trap. We want a weapon that does 2 damage in 1 action. This does 2 damage in 2 actions. So it's basically like just doing 1 damage in 1 action. Because of that, Kukri is bad. It won't leave the binder. This card is bad. No matter what anyone tries to tell you, Kukri right now in 2024, November 1st, 2024, Kukri is bad. It's not playable. It's, I think, one of the few cards that I think at this point is unplayable. There are not many cards left in Arkham that I think are just completely unplayable, but I think Kukri is still is one of those cards. All right. Oh dang, I always forget how long these talky videos go. I just love to yap. So let's drink some water, everybody. If you're at home, if you don't have some water, pause the video, get some water, and let's keep this going. Emergency aid, 2 cost event, choose an investigator location, heal 2 damage from an investigator from an ally asset he or she controls. So I think this card is notably a bit more playable today, just due to the fact that, like, allies are generally stronger. You do have beat cops in your core set. I think I'm going to put this one in. I think I'm actually going to put this one in. Won't move the needle, but playable. With the caveat is that you want to use this on your beat cops. It is a little bit more expensive. It's on the expensive side, because when you're working on just like emergency cash for your economy, it's not really that great. But yeah, there is beat cop and guard dog, so it's like notable for that. Also, Zoe Samaras, the Dunwich Investigator, the Guardian Dunwich Investigator, her ability is when you engage an enemy, gain a resource. Which means that, like, she kind of has some extra economy, so I think that, like, this gets that bonus because of that. Brother Xavier, 5 cost, ally, you get +1 brain. Brother Xavier may be assigned damage and or horror dealt to other investigators your location. When he is defeated, deal 2 damage to an enemy or your location. Now, Brother Xavier is actually pretty good with a limited collection. People meme on Brother Xavier now, and I think it's pretty fair. In the full collection, he does look pretty bad. But Brother Xavier is actually super playable in a limited collection. We played a lot of Brother Xavier back in the day. He soaks for 3 and 3, which is really good, and he also just deals damage when he dies. He's expensive as hell, but again, you have Zoe, so you're probably playing this more in Zoe than you are in like Roland Banks or Schizo Tool. But with Zoe, I think Brother Xavier is a good deck spot filler for that kind of thing. I've got a plan. Fight. This uses it's a 3 cost event. Sorry, it's fight. This attack uses book. You may deal +1 damage to attack for each clue you have to a max of 3 damage. This is actually a pretty strong option for most decks. We're soon going to be getting into the card that like really busted open the Seeker class and gave you something to do with your resources. And this is a way that you can further pay that off with the Dr. Milan stuff, because if you're playing Untaboo Dr. Milan, he gets you resources like crazy. But yeah, this card is... It's good. It's a strong option. It's going to deal with enemies, and having ways to kill enemies is really nice. Dunwich kind of rewards, especially a smaller card pool, also rewards flexing. So like having like the ability to kind of just like do a little bit of everything. And that's especially true in the Dunwich Legacy campaign. And I think the card pool kind of reflects that. And I've Got a Plan is really good for that. Pathfinder. 3 cost, 1 experience. As a lightning bolt during your turn, if you're not engaged with any enemies, exhaust Pathfinder, move to a connecting location. We're going to throw that one up here into the will make an immediate impact. Like Shortcut, free movement is really good. And unlike Shortcut, you can do Pathfinder every turn. So like that's really nice. It means more time investigating. It means more time grabbing clues. It means less actions wasted on moving, which means more actions to win the game. House Slippers, 2 months of the Golden Table. Thank you for your support. Hope you're having a great Friday. Contraband, 4 costs, choose an asset controlled by an investigator location, double the number of ammo or supply tokens on that asset. So I think generally this card would not be playable in just the core set and Dunwich, but you do have Jenny Barnes, and Jenny Barnes has a signature that has ammo on it, and usually a lot of ammo, and being able to double that ammo is really nice, and Jenny can get the money pretty easy because she generates 2 money a turn. And instead of putting, like, for example, 4 money on the card, you can use, like, you know, you could buy more bullets, right? So I'm going to put this in the won't move the needle but playable thing, and this is mostly here for Jenny Barnes. Time Roller, how's it going? Yeah, because I think, like, you don't want to use this on the 45 automatic. You might want to use this on some of the upgraded guns when we get to them. Like the Chicago Typewriter, the Lightning Gun, right? But I think for the most part, well, we'll talk about these when we get there too. Shotgun, I mean, Shotgun is 9 resources for 2 more fires. You'd rather probably just use extra ammunition. This is mostly here for Jenny Barnes and doubling up her gun. So, like, that's what you want to be aiming to do with that. I don't think doubling up the shotgun is you could just use extra ammunition for that, I think. All right. Adaptable. This is a 1 cost, 1 experience permanent. In between each game of a campaign, you may swap up to 2 level 0 cards out of your deck in exchange for an equal number of level 0 cards. You must still follow all deck building rules for your investigator. So this card is... This card has unfortunately been, like, house ruled, where a lot of new players will just do this. Which is fine for a blind run. We did it for our blind run in because when we played back when Mythos packs were released, like with the scenarios. So like there was like scenarios and player cards came out like dripped after the main release. So it was like one of those things with we kind of gave it because it was like the collection was like we got a level 0 card that was like, oh, this came out later, but we couldn't put it in here. So like it's the unfortunate part of adaptable. Is that, like I said, most people just play with this as a rule, which I'm going to judge. I am going to judge if you're doing this after your blind play of a campaign. I think swapping out level 0 cards should only be something you do if you're playing your blind play. That's the only time you should be able to do it. And I will die on that hill because, like, just get better. It's like you can't get better if you keep giving yourself little, like, hooks to stop yourself from getting better. And then you're also like, could you just imagine if there was an event like they were like, you know what, I'm gonna just like get an extra clue every time I investigate because I just want to play with a deduction like once a turn, right? It's like one of those things where it's just like, don't do it. Don't do it. That's me. Just that's my. Why play a game if you're just gonna like take a card that exists and put it on your investigator all the time? With that said, let's actually now just talk about adaptable as a card here. So adaptable as a card is Very good if you know a campaign. It actually is like super efficient if you know a campaign. I wish that this was a neutral card because I think this card would really sing as a neutral. But I think for you as a new player, I'm gonna like it will leave the binder. I mean, it might not leave the binder. It's a permanent. You also could just like remember that you have it. But it is playable. But I think it's going to become playable more when you are on your second run of Dunwich. If you run it back and you want to like try it out and adapt your deck to fit through it. This works really well with like Jenny Barnes because of her Dunwich Investigator style. She can tap into different things because of that. Delve Too Deep. This is a 1-cost event. In player order, each investigator draws 1 card from the top of the encounter deck, then add Delve Too Deep to the victory display. Let's go! This card's going to make an immediate impact on your collection. You're going to be playing this card in the majority of your Mystic decks going forward until you probably get, like, Down the Rabbit Hole. Down the Rabbit Hole or Arcane Research, which come out in Forgotten Age and Edge of the Earth, or the new one, The Great Work, which comes out in the Drowned City, right? So, let me tell you a little bit of a design story, a little preview for Mystic Week and the history of the Mystic class. Mystic cards, so Mystic is like the Investigator class that has the late game power fantasy of I become really strong in the later scenarios. However, in the early days of Arkham, experience was at a lower level in terms of scenarios that came out. So the designers probably saw fit to, like, we need to boost up Mystic's way to get there, and Delve Too Deep was their first version of doing this. So these extra experience cards are kind of part of the identity of the Mystic class. That still goes today, much to the chagrin of a lot of Arkham players. I'm not as bothered by the Great Work as other people, so that's a card that just came out in Drowned City that just gives you 1 extra experience each scenario, and if you die, you turn into a cool homunculus, which is really cool. But one of these things, the extra experience, is very welcome, and I think also still kind of needed for the Mystic class to be able to do what they want to do. Delve Too Deep is very playable. Very, very playable. You'll eventually, like, you'll play it the way you feel like it should be played the first time, and then you'll realize, oh, I should just wait until the end of the scenario to play it. And it becomes so much stronger when you do. And just that extra victory is going to go a long way. Even with a small collection, when there's less things to buy, just more victory is a good thing. Song of the Dead level 2. 5 charges of action, spend 1 charge, fight. This attack uses brain instead of fist. You get +1 brain for this attack. If a skull symbol is revealed during this attack deals +2 damage. This card is bad. It won't leave your binder. Excuse me. It's not good. It's not good. You might be thinking, oh, I have Jim Culver in here. The problem is, in your when you're just playing Dunwich and Core, you don't have any way to manipulate the token bag. Apart from, I mean, like, you do have, I mean, okay, this is a lie. You do have a way to manipulate the token bag. You do, okay? Grotesque Statue. And I think you also get, like, the level 2 version? No, you don't. Level 2 version, I think comes out in, I don't know where the level 2 version is. Maybe it's in Dunwich, but... you get Grotesque Statues, so you can manipulate the token bag, but now you're paying 6 experience when you could just play, like, Shriveling. And Shriveling is also just going to, like, get the job done. And we're going to see Shriveling in... coming up here. So, like, this is it was planted here for Jim Culver, and unfortunately, it's not good. Okay, hear me out. This one, we were desperate for ways to fight in purple back then. No, you weren't. I lived this. You can't trick me, Holy Helicopter. I was playing this game when it came out. You weren't desperate for ways to fight things in purple because you had Agnes frickin' Baker. She had damage. She was how you dealt your damage. We were not desperate for ways to deal damage in purple. We were not. You were because you might have been bad, but we were not. Song of the Dead... Like, yeah, like, Agnes had so much damage. Like, yeah, she had Shriveling 3s, she had Painkillers, she had Forbidden Knowledge. If you were playing Song of the Dead for damage, I'm sorry to say this, I have bad news. You were bad back then, because this card is not good. It's not good now, it's not good then, it's not good ever. Poor Song of the Dead is just not good. Oops. 2-cost event, fast play after you fail a skill test by 2 or less while attacking an enemy engaged with you. Deal this attack's damage to a different enemy at your location. Okay, so this card has 2 fist icons, which is about like the only thing that it has positive going for it. The problem with Oops, though, is that it's very unlikely to actually trigger. You might read this card and you think that this actually might trigger, it might trigger like a lot of stuff and like just be like really, like, there's going to trigger a lot of times. There's going to be a lot of times where you have, like, 2 enemies on your location that's going to, like, actually get things done. Unfortunately, it very rarely, if ever, happens that way. Mostly just because you're killing enemies before you're going to get, like, swallowed up by enemies. And it has to be a different enemy. You need to have 2. You need to fail by 2 or less. It costs 2 resources. This card should not leave your binder. I don't think it is particularly playable. Yes, and this is from a lot of experience. I was bad, and I played this card a lot more than I should have, and I shouldn't. If you're looking for 2 fist icons, you'll be happy with Overpower. Just run that, and it'll get the job done. Fire Extinguisher, 2 cost, 1 experience. Fight, you get +1 fist for this attack. As action, exile Fire Extinguisher, evade. You get +3 foot for this test. If you succeed, evade each other enemy engaged with you as well. I feel bad putting so many cards in the won't leave the binder category. But the reality is that this card is not good. So, like, it's the same kind of thing with Blackjack, which you can see hiding right here, is that there's a better option to fight enemies with, and it's called Fire Axe. Like, you already have it. And, like, Fire Axe in the right build will actually last you all the way to Scenario 8. This is the start of the exile stuff for the Survivor class. There might have been an exile in the core set. There might have been. The Stroke of Luck, is that in the core set? No, there was no exile in the core set. Is there an exile in the extra cards that came? No. Whew. And the issue was that, like, this is not worth the exile. Likewise, with Oops, they have, like, this fantasy where you have, like, multiple enemies engage with you, and that's when the survivors really start to shine. But, like, for the most part, this didn't really happen too much because enemies didn't hunt until you get to the Forgotten Age. And then I think, like, Fire Axe maybe goes up in value if you have that. But for the most part, Survival Instinct gets the improvement instead of Fire Extinguisher. So for that reason, unfortunately, I think that Fire Extinguisher is just, like, not going to leave the binder. It's just... I don't think that is a controversial opinion. I think even today, Fire Extinguisher 1 is not that good. Flare, on the other hand, is pretty good. It's a kill spell, so let me read it. 2 cost, 1 experience. Fight. Choose 1. Fight, you get +3 fist for this attack and deal +2 damage for this attack. Exile Flare. Or search the cards of your top 9 cards of your deck, of any Investigator's deck for an ally asset and put it to play under your control. Then exile Flare, shuffle the search deck. A little bit of a learning moment. Then, comma, is a special ARKHAM rules term where you don't do the everything after the comma unless everything before happened. So you do not need to exile this if you do whiff on the flare. Don't be like me. Don't be bad back in the day and exile this card even if you missed, because that's technically not how the rules work in Arkham Horror. Then, comma, is a special thing where only do this if the previous thing happened. However, I will say, back then I was also bad. I was using this mostly for the ally thing, but the 3 fist, 2 damage is very good. It's very good. I'm going to put this up in the strong option for most decks, and you should definitely be doing this top action more than I did back in the day. Don't be bad like me, be good like me. Don't be bad like past me, be good by like present me. And the don't overlook this. Well, yes, getting Peter Sylvester is really nice. It's not worth the 1 experience the same way the 3 fist and +2 damage is. That's a very good kill spell. Smoking Pipe uses 3 supplies, 1 cost. Spend 1 supply, exhaust Smoking Pipe, and take 1 damage, heal 1 horror. And we also got the Painkillers, 1 cost, use 3 supplies, spend 1 supply, and exhaust Painkillers, and take 1 horror, heal 1 damage. Oh, I keep borking this thing up. I honestly do think that these are probably good deck slot fillers when you're just starting out. I think they're both like fine at what they do. I think they go up in value depending on the Investigator plane, as aforementioned. The Painkillers are really good with Agnes because they just also represent like damage to another an enemy at your location. You're probably playing them in tandem a lot of the time. So I think that's kind of like, I think they're just like good deck slot fillers. They're not going to do anything too insanely crazy, but they are going to get a lot of stuff done. Okay, before we get to Bandolier, I'm just going to pause this video. All right. Got some water, and now let's keep this going. Bandolier. 2 costs, takes up the body slot. You have 1 additional hand slot, which can only be used to hold a weapon asset. So I think this card gets better when you have more cards in your collection. I think it's playable in just the core set because you have your shotgun, which you're planning on taking advantage of, right? Like you have your shotgun and you have your other 2-handed guns that exist in this, like the lightning gun and then also like the Chicago typewriter. So it lets you also use your machete, right? That's kind of like the impact that Bandolier can have. However, I do think that Bandolier gets better when you get more and more stuff. So I'm going to put Bandolier in that won't move the needle but is playable. Mostly just because like it's part of a piece of many pieces, and yeah, I think it's good, but I don't think it's like as good as it is in a lot of decks now, just due to the size of the card pool that comes with it. Stand Together 3, choose another Investigator location. Both you and that Investigator draw 2 cards and gain 2 resources. I really like this card today. This card is one of my favorite economy cards in the game currently. But I don't remember playing this at all during Dunwich. Mostly just because like you spend your experience on other things. Like you would have to buy like a charisma, which you can see right here. You would buy like, you know, you'd buy some big guns and all that stuff. And that was probably a mistake, realistically, right? Like I think this card is really good. Where am I gonna put it with the new knowledge I have? Taking the old knowledge of bad past Justin and going to good Justin. Like, yeah, you do go through Dunwich with only 20 or 25 experience. You probably buy, like, beat cops. But I do think that within the 20 and 25 experience, this probably does make your deck better. I'm going to put this into the good deck slot filler just because the experience is so high. I don't think it's a strong option for most decks yet. When experience becomes less of a thing, I think so. I don't know. It is a strong card. All right, I'm going to do what I rarely do. Whenever I have to make a decision that I don't know, chat, tell me, where do you guys think this card should live with just Corset and Dunwich? Because I'm kind of stuck in between these two. And I think it's mostly just due to the XP cost, right? 3 XP is a lot with just Dunwich. We got 1 for each vote. We got one vote for each tier so far. We're between them. Second or the top tier. If we didn't play it back then, we were just wrong. Because that's kind of like what I'm feeling too, Holy Helicopter, right? I'd say strong, playing with, I think it's good, but not, yeah, so like it's actually like pretty close to down the middle as well, with a slight edge for strong. Wow. It's very interesting, right? And this is kind of like for new players, if you are watching this, hello, welcome. Welcome to Arkham Horror. It's one of the best games you'll ever play. This is why Arkham is so interesting, right? Because like this, there's so many metrics to determine the value of a card, right? And that can change so much from situation to situation, from investigator to investigator, from campaign to campaign, from scenario to scenario, from deck to deck. It's like crazy the amount of stuff that can actually matter for this. And that 3 experience is a little bit sticky. I'm going to go with the gut of, I think Holy Helicopter, you're right, and I do agree with you. Second from the top tier, if we didn't play it back then, we were just wrong. I agree with that sentiment 100%. And then also I agree with what you're saying, Arkham Librarian. With limited XP and Dunwich, I think it's good but not strong. I think I'm going to put in the good deck slot filler, but it could live in either of these. But I think a lot of that will depend, like if someone in your group is playing Delve too deep or not, example, like, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So like that kind of stuff. Art Student. After Art Student enters play, discover 1 clue at your location. Discover 1 clue, soaks for 1 and 2. We're going to put that into the good deck slot filler. I think the card just gets the job done. There's not really much to say about Art Student. She just like gets the job done. She's not as good as Laboratory Assistant. Laboratory Assistant's really good. But Art Student, or as we call it, Fart Student, she does great. I think she is like good. She is a good card, but she's not going to make as much of an impact as these other cards, I think, anyway. But I think she is a good deck slot filler. She's fine. She's very fine for getting there. That is a good point that PAX has for Stand Together. Dunwich, uniquely pushing drawing too much, actually does make it harder to play. That is a very good point. That actually is a very good point. And you know, also you make past Justin feel like less of a dummy. So you know, thank you. Deduction level 2. If the skill test is successful while investigating a location, draw 1 additional clue. Discover 1 additional clue at this location. 2 additional clues instead if it succeeds by 2 or more. This is just a simple strong option for most decks. Hard to say no to just more deduction. Hard to say more to that. I'm out of here. This is level 0 cost. Play only if there's a scenario card with a resign ability on it. Resign, you get the hell out of there. So the reason why this is going to live in the good deck slot filler is because it has 2 foot icons. Remember what I said earlier about icons really making an impact? This card, that means that this card is like always kind of on. And that's really nice for an effect that actually also can be surprisingly quite powerful. Fun fact, you can use this in the first scenario, one of the first scenarios from the Dunwich Legacy to not lose victory in that scenario. Fun little fact with Justin. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there is a way that you can use this to not lose any experience on the first scenario. One of the first 2. Little fun fact with Justin. That is nifty, isn't it, Astute? It is nifty. It's a nifty time. All right. We got Switchblade level 2. So you might have become quite familiar if you're a new player and you played Rogue and you played with the Switchblade because you were like, I want to fight. And you were like, holy hell. This card is bad. Do not worry. They have made an upgraded version within the Dunwich Legacy that you can now play with. So fight, 2 experience, 1 it's fast, fight, you get +2 fist for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, this attack deals +1 damage. I think this is a strong option for most decks. You do still need to work around it, right? In the way that Rogues worked around it in the past. But I do think that you are able to actually like use it to kill things and get things done pretty reliably with some other methods that might show up. Hypnotic Gaze. This is a 3-cost event. Fast play when enemy attacks an investigator location. Cancel the attack, then reveal a random token from the Chaos Bag. If it has a skull, cultist, tablet, squid, or autofail symbol, deal the attacking damage enemies to itself. So, unfortunately, this card is just very expensive. This is kind of the issue that came with the Mystic class, is that, like you also see with Bind Monster, these effects would be so much better if they cost, like 1 or 2 to the point that they would actually be like playable. I think dodging is actually pretty powerful, but for 3 resources, it's not the case. It's just not. Level 3 Shriveling. 3 cost, 3 experience, uses 4 charges. Spend 1 charge, fight. This attack uses brain instead of fist. You get +2 brain if it deal +1 damage with the attack. If a mythos symbol or an autofail is revealed, take 1 horror. This card should have been in the core set for sure. This card should have been in the core set for sure. It's kind of a shame that it wasn't. But this is like the perfect example. Actually, like this and Rite of Seeking are the perfect example of why like Dunwich was actually considered to be like an extension of the core set. So yeah, this card's just really good. It's really good. It's gonna make an immediate impact. It's before this, you're basically like just like fighting with like a Colt, a 32 Colt, which is a card from Path to Carcosa that lets you just like fight with your fist and get +1 damage in the Guardian class. And that's what Shriveling is for a Mystics at level 0. You're basically just fighting with your brain. Like, yes, you have ways to increase your brain, but you really will notice the difference when you get to Shriveling 3. You really will. Newspaper. You get +1 book while investigating if you have no clues. It's 1 cost, takes up the hand slot. So, I think this card is playable when you have a smaller collection. Like, mostly just because, I don't know, it's pretty slow, right? Am I crazy? I don't remember ever playing this card, but I think you probably could have, right? What did Survivor's have for hand slots right now? Fire Axe? Not baseball bat. Yeah, flashlight would be the other thing they'd use. Yeah, I think that this is probably... I think this is the perfect example of a card that won't move the needle, but is entirely playable. Like, I think that it's just like, it's totally fine, you know? Like, it's like the epitome of a card that you're just like, I'll put it in because it's better than... Oops, it's better than bait and switch for most of my decks, right? Like, if this was like put into like actual order here, it would be kind of over there. And yeah, it gets better. There are a lot of scenarios in Dunwich where you do spend your clues down often, so it does get better for that as well. But like, you're never excited about playing or even drawing newspaper, unfortunately. And there's also an upgraded version that unfortunately is in the Return to that I think hasn't seen... We're not going to see... I mean, I hope we see a reprint of it in some way, but right now there's nothing on the horizon. So yeah. I think this won't do anything, but I think it's playable. I mean, I think in Ash Can't Pete it's fine too. Being able to investigate at 6 when you have no clues is pretty nice. Lure. This is a 1 cost, 1 experience event attached to your location during the enemy phase. Each enemy that moves so does along the shortest path towards the attached location, instead of to where it would normally move. While attached at the end of the round, discard Lure. So I did just recently make a video where I said that this card is more playable than I thought it was, but that is with the context of a full collection and like full campaigns where enemies are hunting a lot more than they were back in the Dunwich Legacy. So I'm going to do what past Justin would have done, which is I'm going to say, won't leave this in the binder. Even though I do think this card is better than I gave it credit for, I think in just the context of Dunwich Legacy and Core, this is not going to do anything. It does have 2 foot icons, but I don't think it's worth 1 experience for. You can spend your experience in better places like Peter Sylvester, and you're just going to win the game probably. Okay, Relic Hunter and Charisma, they're both unique because they are actually now part of the revised core. They're vibing down here. This is a great inclusion in the revised core. They should have been there from the get-go. But what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna like put them both. I'm gonna put this one in like the good, like for when they came out, they're gonna live like this, okay? So this is for when they just came out. It's one of those things, like I think like this is actually like for the most part actually like Relic Hunter was kind of living actually kind of down here when it first came out. But I'm going to put it up here because maybe we just weren't playing it as well as we could have, and maybe with like new context now. When we do, Travis and I have discussed doing a series where we play progression. And I'm actually curious to revisit that card pool to see how things change, because I do think that Relic Hunter is going to see more play than we gave it back then. What would you even Relic Hunter on release? Zoe's Cross to, I mean, not Lucky Cigarette Case. Lucky Cigarette Case didn't come out for a long time, right? 2 Rosaries, 2 Rabbit's Foots, right? Like, I'm curious to see if things would be better for how they were. Also, like the Elder Sign Amulet, like the Elder Sign, the thing that soaks for you. But it definitely was, it was not Lucky Cigarette Case. That didn't come out until Winifred. But yeah, like you could like run this and then like also like a Holy Rosary or some other things like this. That would be like, it's one of those things that like maybe in Agnes it was more playable than we let on. Police Badge. Yeah, potentially, right? Like these are things that I think, like even just like 2 Rabbit's Foot might have been better than we gave it credit for back in the day. However, Charisma was always good. Allies were very strong. They were the strongest card type when this game was first released, as you can see by like Pete Sylvester and Dr. Milan. So like this was always making an immediate impact. Also especially true if you're playing this with the Dunwich campaign, because that has a big ally thing as kind of like one of its main mechanics. Prepared for the worst. There's up 9 cards in your deck for a weapon asset and add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. This card will make an immediate impact on your collection when you get this if you just have the core set. Because now you have a way to find your good weapons, which means you need to run less bad weapons. Are we doing all cards against Dunwich? I mean, with the perspective of the recommendation that most people buy an Investigator campaign and an Investigator expansion and a campaign expansion together, yes. Yeah, so this card was huge when it first came out. This was a very noticeable card upon its release. Mostly because like we had less options for good weapons. We have more options for good weapons now, so Prepared for the Worst still, I think, while still playable, has certainly gone down in value. When it just came out, this card was like gigantic to get things done. Keen Eye, 3 experience permanent. Lightning Bolt, spend 2 resources, you get +1 book until the end of the phase. Spend 2 resources, you get +1 fist until the end of the phase. So the issue with this card is that we're about to get into all the permanents. We're about to see all the permanents that you can use to increase your stat value for stuff. The problem for this one is that economy was so much tighter back then. And it was hard to like spend this money in the Guardian class when you were buying beat cops, guard dogs, Brother Xavier's, weapons, like your machetes, right? So like you didn't really have anything that existed otherwise. Not to mention like you had a lot of ways to just like, also just like with like with beat cops to just get your fist up higher. I think this is not in the only the binder, but I think it's gonna like, I think when you just start out, it's super playable, but you're gonna find that it's not gonna be as consistent as you want it to be. And I think that's kind of like, I think Keen Eye is still, even today, one of the ones that's like the least played of this permanent, but it's just because it's expensive, and Guardians are a very resource hungry class, right? It's definitely okay in Zoe, right? But like the economy part of it is just really tough. So I think it's like, you're gonna have to work for it a little bit harder. These cards are also interesting because they actually don't take a spot in your deck. And when you have a limited collection, that's actually such a big part of what makes a card valuable, is if it's able to actually like put a slot in your deck so you don't have to run a bad card. Preposterous Sketches. Play only if there's a clue in your location, draw 3 cards. this was a good deck slot filler in Seekers when it came out. It definitely dropped in rate. Like, it dropped hard. Like, it just just because, like, you know, card draw became so much easier to find. But card draw was still really good, and for the next card we're going to be talking about, you might needed some burst card draw now and then, because we didn't have a way to just consistently just drip ourselves cards, while we did have a way to consistently just drip ourselves resources. So we're going to go with, I think it's a good deck slot filler. It has relevant symbols as well, and its effect is like a little bit more noticeable than other stuff. Here it is, Higher Education. Well, you have 5 or more cards in hand. Higher Education gains Lightning Bolt. Spend 1 resource, you get +2 Brain for this skill test. Spend 1 resource, you get +2 Book for this skill test. So let me paint you a little picture for when this card came out. We had an untabooed Dr. Milan, which you're probably playing with if you're a new player, where you could use him every time you investigated. You grabbed a clue and you got a resource. You then use that resource to get +2 for a book to basically just get an infinite +2 book. Couple in Rex Murphy, you're getting 2 clues each time you did this. It was absolutely nuts, while also moving around with Pathfinder and Shortcut without spending actions. It was crazy. This card will definitely make an immediate impact on your collection if you are playing a Seeker. This card is still very good and very playable today, but the reality is just that you have a lot better things to spend your resources on, and when you're just when you have this limited collection, you actually have a lot less to spend your resources on. And also Dr. Milan, of course, accrues resources at a much slower rate if you're playing with the taboo list, so it's still very good, and you'll still play it even when you get a full collection. I think my qualifier for this one is that if you're playing a full collection, that's never mind, because this doesn't work with that, because this doesn't hit on the full collection, but it's just the impact it makes is so good when you just start out. But all the other ones, it's you'll still play them even if you have a full collection. I'll still play Prepared for the Worst, depending on my deck makeup, if I don't want to just run in some random, if I'm looking for a specific weapon. Yeah. Lone Wolf. 1 cost, level 1 per investigator. When your turn begins, if there are no other investigators at location, gain 1 resource. Yeah, this is a strong option for most decks. I think this is a pretty powerful rogue economy when you have a smaller collection. Rogue, it's actually funny, for being the money class, Rogue didn't really have a lot of good ways to make money until much later in the game's lifespan. So it was one of those things where the Rogue was known as the money class because they had High Roller and they had Jenny Barnes, right? It's a very good card if you're playing with a smaller number of players. When you get to 4 players, it might be a little bit tricky to trigger it consistently. But if you're playing 3, 2, or especially 1, it's very good, right? It's very good. It's also, yes, it's a very good splash card for the other investigators. The downside is that you're going to be running 2 of them. I don't think it's going to make an immediate impact in the way that these things do for me personally, but I think it's still a very strong card. Streetwise, this is the Rogue permanent. Spend 2 resources, you get +3 book. Spend 2 resources, you get +3 foot. I think if Jenny wasn't here, this card would be so much worse. But I am going to put it up into the strong options. For most decks. Poor Skids. I think I'm going to put this in the good deck slot filler because it doesn't actually fit this definition, right? And if I'm going to put this definition on here, I think we need to follow it, right? Because that is a good point. It was the only way to attempt to play the game with Skids. The problem is Skids was really... But what do you do with this? You just investigate? Because you can't use your foot for anything yet, only for evading, right? By exact definition, it's not deck filler because it's not in your deck. That's a good point. All right, we'll put it got the upgrade then, because you're right. It actually makes less sense here. Oh, Revised Core? Okay, no, that's a good point. Revised Core does have lockpicks. Okay, no, that's a good point. It does have lockpicks. You are right, astute. Okay, yeah, that'll put it up in a strong option for most decks then. I feel confident about that. Because you do have lockpicks, so you actually can use it. You actually can use it. But like most of the time you're using this probably for Jenny as opposed to Skids. I think in Jenny Streetwise is really, really, really nice. Yeah. However, if you do what Holy Helicopter says and bring this and investigate as Skids, I don't want to play with you. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I won't invite you back. I won't. That'll be it. If we're playing like a limited collection and you're only doing, you're like, I'm Skids O'Toole, and you're like, I'm going to investigate with Streetwise, I'm sorry, that might be the end of our friendship. Like, that might be it. Unless you've been like grandfathered in. Like, if Bryn doesn't during our progression quest, Bryn gets a pass. But if it's like my third time meeting you, I don't think I can ever play with you again. That would be like, hands up. So you just don't pick Skids at all then, right? Yeah, no, Skids is pretty bad. I would rather see someone play Jenny than Skids with just Dunwich and Core. Because like if you're playing Skids, I mean like, so if you're playing Skids, you could do 2 Beat Cops, Charisma, and Switchblade, right? You need a lot to get going, and I'd rather see you just play Zoe. Like if I'm looking at it from my pure Spike perspective, I don't think there's a reason to play Skids with the core set and Dunwich. I'm getting distracted. This is just about the player cards, not investigators. How dare chat distract me? Defiance. Before revealing chaos tokens for this test, choose one of the following symbols: skull, cultist, tablet, or squid. Ignore the effects of the chosen symbols during this test, including its modifier. Yeah, I think this is just a fine deck slot filler. It'll get the job done. Commits for a wild. You can cancel like a squid that's going to be really bad against you, right? Like that kind of thing. It'll fill a slot in your deck and it'll get the job done. We have Blood Pact. This is the Mystic of the permanents. 3 experience. Lightning Bolt. Add 1 Doom to Blood Pact. You get +3 Brain. Add 1 Doom to Blood Pact. You get +3 Fist. This card is going to go into the won't move the needle but playable. It's good, but the issue with it is that your experience is like in so many other places. You have to buy 2 Shrivelings. You're probably going to buy a Rite of Seeking, the upgraded version. Oh, you know what? Oh man, maybe I do put it up here. Because you do have the Moonlight Ritual. I'm gonna put it up into this one. Because there really isn't actually that much to spend your experience on. There really isn't, right? There's Rite of Seeking, there's the 2 Shrivelings. I mean, you could buy Ward 5 when we get to it. But, like, there's nothing in here. Like, this is just, like, yuck. I mean, you might buy this because you have to. But yeah, the Doom Clocks were high. We have a Moonlight Ritual, which we're going to talk to about over... It's hidden behind Blood Pact right now, but it's just over here. Yeah, and the numbers are really big. Yeah, I'm going to put up in strong option for most decks. I convinced myself out of this one. I think that only Keen-Eye is going to be down there. Rise to the occasion. Commit only to a skill test you perform, and only if the difficulty of the test value is too higher than your base skill value. This wasn't that playable, right? When you had just this? Because I'm trying to think of the investigators we had. And how often this would actually trigger, though. Yeah, you use this, so like, yeah, you use this for Pete to investigate a 4-shroud location without Duke, right? That's exactly the case. That's bad. That's a bad situation. I'm going to put this should not leave the binder. This is actually really bad when you just have a limited collection. It's honestly actually pretty... That situation of using it on Pete to get to 5 on a 4-shroud location seems abysmal. Remember a time when Won't Leave the Binder only had 6 cards? Told not much more was going in there. It's true. But I mean, like, once again, if we look at the Won't Leave the Binder, it is, like, still eclipsed by everything that is playable. People look at the Won't Leave the Binder. There's also time you lean on Lucky a lot harder for testing 1-up. It's true, but I would rather still just only spend 1 card and test 1-up than spend 2 cards and test 1-up with a Lucky, you know? I think it has to live and Won't Leave the Binder. I think it has to. Alright. Scrapper, permanent. This is the Survivor one. Spend 1 resource, you get +1 fist. Spend 1 resource, you get +1 foot. I think this one was, like, always super playable. Just because the rate on it is, like, pretty fair. It's not to the broken level that higher education was with a small collection. But it still was just, like, pretty, just consistently strong. Emergency Cash 2. Draw 3 recourse. Gain 3 resources, draw 1 card. We're going to put that in the good deck slot filler one. I love eCash 2. I love it so much. I think it's very powerful. I think it's underplayed. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful card. However, there are better things to spend your experience on, especially when you're just playing with Dunwich Legacy. Like when you're playing with like just Dunwich, right? And you're like, you have to spend your experience in other places. You might get it later. But it's one of those things that it's not like a priority upgrade, so we're just going to put it down at the good deck slot filler. If it bleeds, fast play after monster enemy. After you defeat a monster enemy, each investigator location heals horror equal to the enemy's horror value. Say the line, Bart. It won't leave the binder. Did it also get added to the revised core? It did! Let's go! So now you have 4 copies of eCash. If you're playing 2 players, everyone can play it. Yeah, so that does bring it down a bit, but still. I think it is still just a good deck slot filler for sure. If it bleeds, is not good. Don't play it. It doesn't have a trait. If it doesn't have a trait, it does not deserve to be played. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules, but I kind of do make the rules. Oh no. We're in a bad sitch here. We're in a bad sitch. We're in a string of a few cards that are going to be a little bit poopy for sure. Springfield M1903 uses 3 ammo. Action: spend 1 ammo. Fight. You get +3 fist and deal +2 damage with attack. Cannot be used to attack enemies engaged with you. No, don't play this. If you want to do the big gun fantasy, there's a much more fun big gun we're going to be talking about in the future. It's so restrictive. It's so restrictive. Like, even if you want to play, like, the big gun fantasy, just play shotgun. Like, that's so much better of a big gun fantasy, right? Like, that's just, like, so much more exciting. Play this, not Springfield. Sorry. Inquiring Mind. Commit only to a skill test if there's a clue your location. Okay, so this might be a little bit controversial due to my thoughts on this card. But I think this card's going to make an immediate impact on your collection. I think you're going to notice that this card is, like, going to help you pop off in ways that are, like, unfathomable, right? I think this card, I like to cut it pretty early today. But like, it makes such, like, just getting 3 icons on a test is huge. No, I said it's controversial so okay, when I say it's controversial, Holy Helicopter, I said it was controversial to what I've said about Inquiring Mind, like, before. Like, my thoughts on Inquiring Mind today. People give me a hard time because I cut Inquiring Mind pretty early, because I think it's bad after, like, scenario 2 in the current card pool. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's controversial for my thoughts on, like, what I talk about Inquiring Mind today, right? Because back then, this card was the shit. I still looked at cutting it pretty early, because I like my things to always be active, but it is very impactful. It's going to make an immediate impact on your card pool for sure when you open up this box. And then there's Exposed Weakness. 1 cost 0, fast, play during a lightning bolt window. Choose an enemy or location, test foot, book X, X enemy's fight value. For each point you succeed by, reduce that enemy's fight value by 1 for the next attack performed against it this phase. Great fantasy. Honestly, could be a great card if it was only just like the next attack, you know? I'm gonna put this down to the, won't leave the binder. Quick thinking. If this skill test is successful by 2 or more after resolves, you may immediately take an action as if it was your turn. It does not count toward the number of actions you can take each turn. This one will make an immediate impact. Just want to give another big shout out to Quick Thinking for, very good in Rex Murphy. Very good in Rex Murphy. If you're playing 4 players and you're Rex Murphy, that is definitely something you want to be doing for sure. What the hell? Just see down here, US issues final warning, and then it cuts off. That's a headline that I'm curious what it says, but I don't want to read in this video. Lucky Dice. 2 cost, 2 experience. After you reveal a chaos token, spend 2 resources. Issues final warning to Canada. It's true. That's why I'm concerned. After you reveal a chaos token, spend 2 resources. Ignore that chaos token. Reveal another one to resolve. If that token has the autofail symbol, remove Lucky Dice from the game. So I think this card got actually much worse with more cards. But I do think that this card is playable in specifically Jenny Barnes, so I'm going to be putting it up in the won't move the needle, but playable. I have distinct memories of Bryn using this card to his advantage as Jenny Barnes, so that's kind of why I'm putting it up here for the won't move the needle, but is technically playable. The best kind of playable, technically playable. Opportunist. 4 XP. It's 4 XP, don't worry about it. We have a card coming up soon that we're going to be talking about. Wait, that's not from this cycle? Never mind. 4 XP is noticeable then, but I do think that it's, Rogues didn't really have, like, they buy, like, the gold pocket watch or this. Like I said, it's playable. On average, popping a +3 from Streetwise is better than spending the same 2 resources on a Lucky Dice reroll. Chad, I fucking hate you. Just can't let me move ahead in the video. Need to drop this. Chat. All right. Let's take a few seconds here. Let's just take a few seconds and look at our frickin' tier list, okay? Let's look at our tier list. Do you notice something between Streetwise and Lucky Dice? Do you notice that there's maybe like a whole tier between them? Do you not realize that the on average popping a +3 from Streetwise is better than spending the same 2 resources on a Lucky Dice reroll? Yeah! That's why there's a whole tier between them! God, context, man, context! Look at that, just trying to get me distracted and go back so I have to spend 3 hours on this video? Jenny can play this card because she gets the 2 resources to trigger it. If she doesn't need to use her Streetwise, maybe, for example, she's taking a brain test, right? Maybe she's taking a brain test and she's doing it on a rotting remains. She gets like the squid. It's like -3, place a doom on an enemy. Maybe she wants to spend those 2 resources to instead redraw that token to do something else, right? Like maybe she gets like a bad symbol token. She doesn't want to resolve it. She's like, I'm okay with taking the horror, but I don't really want to like, you know, put a doom on an enemy, for example, like that, or place a doom on the agenda, or like discard 4 cards from my deck. And now for 2 resources, she's instead just like playing a deny existence, which is, if you don't know as a new player, cancels an effect that the game is doing to you from an encounter card, or like as a ward of protection to just do those things, right? Like it's actually just like, that's like the context for it. Yes, in a vacuum, if we're just looking on the tin, 2 resources for +3 is better than 2 resources for pulling a token. Again, that's why there is a whole tier between these. Like it's in the won't move the needle but playable. People are actually won't move the needle but playable. Well, Lucky Dice versus Fur Coat. Lucky Dice versus Fur Coat. We're talking about Dunwich and core only here. Fur Coat doesn't exist in this conversation. Lucky Dice versus Fur Coat? Are you crazy? These people don't know what Fur Coat is. We're talking just about core set and Dunwich Legacy. These people don't know what Fur Coat is. They just opened up their Dunwich Legacy box and they're thinking, what do these cards do? Oh shoot, I'm sorry. It's okay. I'm playing it up for the bet. I'm not actually upset at all. I'm not upset. I'm actually like, this is all just, I'm just vibing with you guys. I'm not bothered at all. I'm playing a character right now. I'm not upset at all. Don't worry. I am short on breath though because I was yelling. But yeah, no, don't worry. These are not my actual opinions. I'm just vibing with the video. Yeah. I came late. Don't know it was Dunwich of course. Yeah, no, don't worry. That's why I'm not actually serious. No, it's there's no anger here. Like I said, I'm just playing a character on TV. But yeah, no, I do think that this card is pretty bad for the most part, but I do think that it's at least playable in that one situation. So I am going to put Lucky Dice up here because I do think that it actually like is worth it to leave the binder. Like if it left the binder, if you were playing Jenny Barnes, I wouldn't be that shocked, you know? So that's why I'm going to put it here. But I do agree, it is very, very not good. The ran ended up being good insight for new players. Yeah, I know. It was. There's so much context for Arkham that makes things really change the value of things in certain areas, right? So like exactly that. Like, yeah. All right, now on to Opportunist. Commit only to a skill test you're performing. This is a 2 experience skill. If you succeed by 2 or more, return Opportunist to your hand after this test instead of discarding it. I think this card is pretty bad in the core set. I don't think it's unplayable. 2 experience is a lot though, right? I think I'm going to put this in the won't move the needle but is playable category. So we're going to put it, it's going to be playable. It's playable. Like if you're playing like a Switchblade deck, I think it goes up in value. Crazy how bad, like, the Opportunist, I mean, like, yeah. I can't talk about it in context beyond this, so unfortunately we just need to leave it there. Because there's a lot of context for Opportunist when you get into a full collection, but it's not relevant for this video, so we're just going to leave it here and go like that. That's not Wendy in the picture? No. I wish it was. Wendy doesn't wear, like, Wendy doesn't wear a black dress like that. She has more of those fluffy things. Yeah, she has like the fluffy shoulders. Similar pose. You can tell it's not the same person. Actually right next to each other too. That's funny. All right, let's keep this going. Alyssa Graham, 4 cost. You get +1 book. As a lightning bolt exhauster, look at the top card of either the encounter deck or any player deck. You may then add 1 doom to Alyssa Graham to place a look deck card on the bottom of its deck. I think she's fine. I think she's a good deck slot filler. Yeah. I don't think there's anything like... I don't think she's like a strong option. I could see you playing her in like... if you're Ashcan Pete, and... I mean, no, you're playing Peter Sylvester if you're Ashcan Pete. Never mind. But I could see playing her in Gym, right? +1 book is just like a good stat to come with, right? Like +1 book is incredibly relevant. So... Like with Jim, if it puts you, what, to 4? Does Jim have 3 book? Just a quick look. Jim? You think I would know? Or does he have 2 book and 3 fist? Oh, yeah. He's a 4-3-3-2. Okay, yeah. Puts you at 4, which is like not a bad number with Jim. Especially when most of your skulls are 0. Yeah. She's pretty good. She's not like great, like she's not up in this tier, but she's a good investigator. You'll find good legs with her. Rite of Seeking 4. Spend 1 charge, investigate using brain. You get +2 brain for this test. If successful, you discover 2 additional clues. We're gonna put this up in strong option. I think it is still pretty. But the thing is, so the thing that changes things is that you have Rite of Seeking 2. So I think I'm going to put this down here. because you get Rite of Seeking 2 in your revised core. And this is like the best one for the majority of cases. Like if you're playing 2-player, if you're playing 3-player, 4-player, this card will go up in power, right? Because it gives you 3 clues instead of 2. But like, yeah, 5 money is like my whole bank account. It is. It is. 100%. Unless you're Jenny and you have your dad giving you some extra juice, right? Dark Horse. Limit 1 per investigator during the upkeep phase. You may choose not to gain resources. While you have no resource in your resource pool, you get +1 to all your stats. This card is going to make an immediate impact on your collection because it is something that instantly creates an archetype for you to play with your Fire Axe. And then also like Scrapper to also take advantage of it. Like these 3 cards, which are conveniently in a row for us, like that's pretty sick how that happens. Like that's pretty sick how this happens here. That these all work really together to just sing, right? Also, yes, like this is what Astute said earlier. Fire Axe and Dark Horse are actually 4 really good cards for Jenny's Splash, right? Because you can use the Fire Axe to get +4 with her ability, and then like the extra 5 is going to come from Dark Horse, which is really nice. Just something to consider. It's a build you actually could follow pretty easily in the core. Survival Instinct 2. If this test is successful during an evasion attempt, the evading enemy may immediately evade each other enemy engaged with him or her and may move to a connecting location. I think it's fine. I think it's just good deck slot filler. Likewise with the other Survival Instinct, it's not a bad card. I think it's just good though. You won't be upset about running this, the level 0 or the experienced version here. Of course, the level 0 version is in the core set. We actually got an upgrade for each of the skills from the core set, which is really nice because we got some really good stuff here. Leadership. Well, leadership is committed to a skill that's being performed by another investigator. Leadership gains Brain Wild. We're not gonna... I think this card is not great, but I actually think it's playable in the core set and Dunwich, mostly because, like, options are more limited for how you manage the Mythos phase, right? So just having something that allows you to protect yourself, or, as Beard is saying in chat, help your Mystic out and boost them, I think is a really nice tool that that you can pop off with. As soon as you get like 1 more expansion, this card will probably never leave the binder again, right? Unless you're playing like a weird deck or like down the rabbit hole skills, right? But when you have just Dunwich and just core, it is going to be playable. But it's as soon as you get like any other skills that fill a similar hole, it's done. It's cut. You're not probably seeing it again. I've had worse for... It costs so much. And you also even get it here. So I'm going to put this one in Don't Leave the Binder. Because you've already got it. And it's like already on the edge of not being that good. Because it costs 4 experience. I wish they just gave us the 2 experience one. The 4 experience one IMO was a mistake to put it in here. I don't get it. So for people who don't know, because you might not know this, there is a level 2 version. Because it's very good. The level 2 version is really nice. The level 4 version is just so expensive. This is the card we got and said Stand Together 3 back then. Honestly, probably. We probably did that. We probably did that. Level 2 version feels like, oh, we made a mistake and this is the fix. It kind of does. And then they were like, they made the mistake again of putting this in the revised core. Yeah, so I'm going to put that in the Won't Leave the Binder. All right, we're on finally to the payoff to the strange solution that we talked about earlier. So these are 3 cards. Again, you only can put these into your deck if you've translated this, if you have researched this strange solution. And there's 3 different versions. You can choose the version you upgrade into. We have the Restorative Concoction, which is spend 1 supply, heal 2 damage from Investigator your location. We have the Acidic Ichor, which is spend 1 supply, fight. This fight an attack with a base skill of 6. This attack deals +2 damage. And we have the Freezing variant, which is spend 1 supply, evade with a base skill of 6. So this is pretty easy. We're going to put the healing one in the won't leave the binder. Playable in standalone mode? By rules as written, no. In my opinion, that rule is stupid, so yes. Because in theory, if we think about it, chat, if we think about it, they could never playtest the game unless it's in campaign mode with these cards if they follow that rule. So I think I have a little hunch that even that they don't even follow that rule when they do that. Just a thought. Not trying to cause any chaos here. I'm not trying to upend the whole system. But I think you could play these in standalone. I think you should be able to. But yeah, no, the heal version's not great. The Acidic Ichor is going to make an immediate impact. And I think the foot version is honestly a strong option. We'll put in a good slot, the slot filler. Old Cthulhu, thanks for the follow. I can't wait for Young Cthulhu. Old Cthulhu's still sick though. But yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair. We'll put this in the good deck for the foot one. I think it is like pretty legit. But Acidic Ichor is just like head and shoulders above the rest. And trust me, I know head and shoulders. I have dandruff issues, so. Joey the Rat Vigil, 4 cost, 0 experience, ally slot. This guy came out of Dunwich, huh? That's how you know he's probably not that great. Spend 1 resource, choose an item asset from your hand, and play it paying its cost. I'm just going to be true to myself. This guy probably won't leave the binder. He eventually gets an upgraded version, which is like really good. The upgraded Joey the Rat is a really inspired and really fun card to play with. And also particularly powerful. But this guy just doesn't do anything, actually. Like, he soaks for you a lot, but not enough. For 4 resources, you kind of are expecting a stat boost with allies. And I think already the language kind of tells you that. Alyssa Graham, Brother Xavier. Leo DeLuca, he doesn't really give you a stat boost, but he gives you an action, which is really good. There was a running meme from Bryn for like the first 4 years of the game when any green ally was released where he put up paper on camera with not Leo written on. Is that true? That's actually really funny. But yeah, Joey the Rat unfortunately won't leave the binder that much. Because yeah, it's 5 resources to play an asset for free, which is not particularly great. And you can do it multiple times after. So yeah, it's just not Leo is a great way to put it. Ace in the Hole, exceptional fast, play only during your turn, so it costs 6 experience. You may take 3 additional actions this turn. I think this is just good. It's a good deck slot filler for sure. You'll eventually play it and it's alright. Is it better than I remember? Bryn, is it maybe up here? I'm trying to think of Bryn with this card. No, I think this card gets better when you get more powerful things to do. But I think it's still playable in Dunwich. Like, 3 extra actions on your turn is still very, very useful, right? Extra turn, right? Like, as a rogue, you're not doing too much with it. And, like, you know, it is expensive on the XP, right? It is going to cost you 6. But I don't think it's, like, good enough to, like... What else are you doing with your experience? 3 more resources? Hell yeah, this is an emergency cache. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking. But yeah, no, I do think that this is... Yeah, I think it's good. I still think it's good. 6 XP is practically 2 scenarios in Dunwich. Not necessarily true. I got 6 XP in my first scenario in Dunwich yesterday. It's possible. I think, honestly, I think when you're just playing, yes, Dunwich has a lower experience count. But I think as you play the game more, Dunwich is actually is not as experience starved as people make it out to be. Especially like when you have the delve too deep to work with you. Like if we're just looking at just this, there's a lot of ways. You have nothing to do with 3 actions because your lockbook's already exhausted. Exactly, right? I still think it's hard to say no to 3 actions. I think it definitely doesn't, like, 3 actions will move the needle, so it has to be up here. Moonlight Ritual. Remove all doom from a card you control. This is a combo piece, so we're going to put it down in here. You're using this with, like, Blood Pact or your Arcane Initiate. It's not going to do anything too crazy, but it is playable, so we're going to put it there. Fearless. If the skill is successful, heal 1 horror, 2 horror instead if it succeeds by 2 or more. I think this is a strong option for most Mystic decks in a limited collection like this. When you only have this, it's going to just, like, this is really nice, really good in Agnes. Is it maybe enough to make an immediate impact, chat? Is it maybe good enough? I don't think so personally, because I think these cards are just going to be consistently better. But I do think it's close. I think it's close, right? It is a very strong card. I think I'm going to put it here. It's just like, it's very easy to slot in. The downside is that it does cost 2 experience, so it's like going to be one of those things that you're going to do it later on, but it is still really nice. Notably, I didn't mention it for Peter Sylvester, very good with Agnes Baker as well. Agnes is like a very tight investigator when you get Dunwich in her cycle as well. The Jewel of Aureolus, 3 cost, 3 experience. After a symbol token, after a skull, cultist, tablet, squid, or autofail symbol is revealed during a skill tested location, exhaust the Jewel of Aureolus, draw 1 card, or gain 2 resources. So this card is very good. It's very good. This card is incredibly good. It's so freaking good. It's very, very good. Problem is, Holy Rosary is also pretty damn good, and it costs 0 experience. And when you're playing Dunwich, your experience is going to things like your shriveling. You don't have like the way to expedite experience. As I mentioned earlier, Mystics are very good at expediting their experience now with a full card pool. As soon as you get like Forgotten Age or Edge of the Earth or the new Drowned City, you're going to have more time to buy other things, right? And one of those other things might be the Jewel of Aureolus. With that, I'm going to put it into... Honestly, I'm still putting it in strong option for most decks. This card is very powerful. And if I could make the decision to not play Holy Rosary as much back in the day with Agnes, I think I would. I think I would in a heartbeat. Because this seems so much better. Yeah, I'm going to put that there. A chance encounter. 1 cost, choose an ally asset in any player's discard pile, put that asset into play under your control. At the end of the round, if that asset is still in play, discard it. So, the issue with this is that it really only kind of like... Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. You can let me know otherwise. But like, this really only popped off with Fart Student and Lab Ass, the Laboratory Assistant, right? Was there another ally that I'm missing that this really sung with? Yeah, Rex also can't take this. It is a fortune. Beat Cop for 1 damage. 1 experience, 1 resource and an action for 1 damage. Is that good enough, though? That's the question, right? I'd say Brother Xavier probably, but Brother Xavier, he needs to die to deal this damage, right? Red Glove Man. Ah, yes, the plot twist. Great question. Great point. He's going to be coming, but yes, Red Glove Man is the other one you use this on, right? Yeah, so I guess like B-Cop's like on the edge of that. I think overall though, I think there's enough examples here. This won't move the needle, but it is playable. And once we get to the Red Glove Man, oh god, that's where the combo lives. So it's going to have some more value once we get there. Kills a far-off Acolyte. Well, you need to walk to the Acolyte, right? If the Acolyte's far off, you need to walk to the Acolyte if you have that B-Cop thing. It does kill an Acolyte, though. One action to kill an Acolyte is not terrible. Alright, Stroke of Luck. This is a 2 experience skill in the Survivor class. Commit only to a skill test you're performing after revealing Chaos tokens for this test. You may choose to exile Stroke of Luck. If you do, this test automatically succeeds unless auto-fail was revealed. It's fine. It won't move the needle, but it's playable for sure. It's better than you give it credit for, especially like in the exile sucks, but you can like bring this into the last scenario. It's a playable card, but it's particularly not great. It should be able to also stop the autofail, but I understand that in earlier design they didn't want to do that, and then they said frick it. Then they said frick it. You can do your Survivor can interact with the autofail. They said frick that. You can do this, which makes Stroke of Luck look a little bit less good. So like that's also brings Stroke of Luck down, where you can just like keep your Catastrophe in hand and just do that instead. Fine Clothes, honestly, just a good deck slot filler. So it does, it's 1 cost, reduce the difficulty of the skill test you perform during parlay actions by 2. The reason why it's a good deck slot filler is because we're not caring about the parlay. We will care about the parlay more in the future, but right now, honestly, just having a card that we can play for 1 to soak for 1 and 1 is fine. Having a card that we can discard from our hand that we don't really care about is fine. Having a card that we can commit to take less damage from a grasping hands is fine, right? Like these are all things that are just like, it has all these things, and Fine Clothes is just going to do it good enough that it's going to get the job done. And it just gets better. Moment of Respite, 3 cost, 3 experience, play only if there are no enemies at your location, heal 3 horror, and draw 1 card. I think this card also won't move the needle, but is playable. If you're like in a bad situation, this card can help you out of it. Like you don't buy this card unless you are having a rough run, and then when you do, it's actually like pretty okay. It's expensive. Yes, it's expensive, but this isn't a card you just put into your deck. This is a card that you put into your deck as tech against the campaign because you have a lot of trauma and you need to get through that. So, yeah. I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Vicious Blow 2. So I think this card is going to make an immediate impact on your collection. I think it is, like, I think Deduction 2 is a tier below Vicious Blow 2, just because, the reason is, and this is a little bit advanced when you get into the things, like, when you're first playing, you might not notice this, but clues scale more with the number of players than damage on average, right? Like you'll commonly come into location and be like 2 clues per player, or like 1 clue per player, and like then Deduction 2 doesn't scale as well on higher player counts. But Vicious Blow 2 always scales because you have a lot less random enemies that show up that say I have 2 health per player. It's usually only boss monsters, right? And Vicious Blow are still good against boss like Vicious Blow 2 is still good against boss monsters. Boss monsters. Red bumper, yellow, baby bumper. Gotta just do a tongue twister. But what Vicious Blow 2 does do is it kills all the small enemies that show up that have 3 health or 4 health. And that just helps you get over that hump a little bit quicker. So Vicious Blow, I think, will make an immediate impact quicker. Boss monsters might have a higher fight value, though, so it's harder to get that +2. That's a great point as well. They do probably have a higher fight value. Most of them hover still around 4, but it is a good point that, like, even then, like, Vicious Blow is just used more routinely on threats that show up, which is really nice. Monster Slayer, 5 experience, 1 cost, fight. If this deck succeeds against a non-elite enemy, defeat that enemy. Oh god, no. Do you know what I love doing? I love paying 5 experience for a card that I have to make a test on. That gives me no boosts and is just like, good luck. It's like, good luck. I understand that the idea, so there's an enemy in Dunwich that has like 1 attack but 6 health, and it eats your melee weapons. But yeah, it's Holy Helicopter is 100% right. It's still questionable. Dunwich campaign does have targets for this, but it's still a questionable inclusion. So, unfortunately, I don't think I've ever played this card outside of the Play All Card Challenge. We're in the last pack, though. Lightning Gun, 6 cost, 5 experience, uses 3 ammo, spend 1 ammo, fight. You get plus 5. 5 fist. 5. A whole hand makes a fist. And this attack deals plus 2 damage. So plus 5 and 3 damage. Unfortunately, it does cost 6 money and 5 experience, but this is like part of the big gun fantasy. So I'm going to put in the strong option for most decks. When you have this thing, like if you want to play big guns and you have your extra ammunition, this is playable. I think this card was particularly playable with Zoe Samaras, right? Because she gets the money for it. And she can also run extra ammunition, which if you don't know, again, I'll show you some. I've been showing some cards, so we can go for this. And yeah, it does compare very unfavorably to Monster Slayer. Yeah, so you have the extra ammunition, which is basically another copy of your lightning gun. And the Prepared for the Worst helps you find it, right? So like there's a lot of like good pieces that make this a particularly good thing to build around. The issue with lightning gun, obviously besides the XP cost and the money, is that melee weapons just scaled better as the time went. So it's like one of those things you see less people talk about lightning gun, mostly just because there's cases where, like, for example, shotgun is more fun to build around because like the fantasy is higher on shotgun, right? It's also 1 experience less, 1 resource less. But it is one of those things that like lightning gun was still playable as a big weapon. It's just been unfortunately like kind of scaled out of the game. Okay. Dr. William T. Mailson. When you draw an encounter card, exhaust him, place 1 of your clues on your location, cancel the drawing of that card, and shuffle it back into the encounter deck, then draw a new card from the top of the encounter deck. I think he's fine. He's playable, right? He's playable. The problem is, once again, so like the reason why laboratory assistant and art student are playable more is because they don't care if you eventually, like, they get a benefit, and then if you play Dr. Milan, you don't care, right? What this guy does, though, is he gives you great soak for a very cheap cost, but he doesn't have an effect that comes into play, like research librarian, laboratory assistant, or art student. Because most of the time, you're looking at probably playing Dr. Milan and then going nuts with higher education, right? Like, that's the loop you're going for. So it's one of those things that, like, this guy is very well efficiently costed, but he's, like, lacking that thing that just really makes him pop. So I'm going to put him down in the... Won't move the needle, but is playable. Deciphered Reality, Investigate. This difficulty, this test is equal to the highest shroud value among your revealed locations of play. If you succeed, discover 1 clue from each revealed location in play. 5 experience, 4 cost. Okay. Excuse me. I don't know. I don't know what to think of this card. If there ever was a time it's playable, it's like when the higher education loop is at its strongest, right? And the higher education loop is just generally at its strongest in Dunwich because there's not much else to distract you from it, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's 5 experience, though. And you're buying your strange solutions. I don't remember playing this that much, you know? I would say this card is more scenario dependent than card pool dependent. I agree. Unfortunately, we're rating this card on card pool. Hey, thanks for the follow. As I ponder this deciphered reality. So the thing is, I don't think this card was ever particularly playable. But it will leave the binder, so it's definitely not going down here. Yeah, the one move that needed but playable is kind of where I'm going to, just because it's so expensive. So we'll put it there. I can't really explain why either. It's just because, like, well, it's because it's so scenario dependent. You actually have, like, no control over this card. So yeah, I think we're just gonna put it in there. It's like, it looks so good, but because you have no control, it's not really like possible to actually do anything. Chicago typewriter. Spend 1 ammo, fight. You may spend a number of additional actions when you perform this attack. You get +2 fist this attack for each action being spent, including the action's ability cost. This attack deals +2 damage. 5 cost, 4 experience. I think this is a pretty good gun. Playable definitely in our good friend Jenny Barnes, right? She can pop this to make it work. This dealing 3 damage is really nice. You could also do this in skids and like do the B-Cops and do like a very like the classic rogue thing. The classic rogue thing to put together a slap together thing to just like, maybe this works. With Leo DeLuca, you're kind of canceling his ability to make +4 if you really need to. I'm going to put this as a strong option for most decks. I think it's a good big weapon. As you get more rogues, this card's going to go up in value too. Gold Pocket Watch. This is exceptional. 2 cost, 4 experience. When a phase begins, remove Gold Pocket Watch from the game. Skip this phase. After phase ends, remove the Gold Pocket Watch from the game. Repeat this phase. This is a strong option for most decks. If you're looking for something to spend your rogue experience on, this does it. It's a strong card in this limited collection. I think it's still playable today, but not as playable as it was when it first came out. Really nice card. It's definitely like, it's expensive on experience. It costs you 8. It costs 8 experience. But when you look at the rogue high end, there actually isn't too much. What do they even have for their upgrades in the core set? Leo, Sure Gamble. Yeah, you had nothing to spend your experience on. Lockpicks, the Derringer's nice at least. The Derringer, upgraded Derringer's nice. Yeah, so that makes this card particularly strong for your option, the decks that you have here. On to Shriveling 5. 4 charges, spend 1 charge, fight, uses brain, you get +3 brain, deal +2 damage, so it's dealing 3. If a skull, cultist, tablet, squid, or auto fail is revealed, take 2 horror. So it's not as good generally as the level 3 version, but it is still a good card, so we're going to put it up in here. Likewise with the 4 experience Rite of Seeking. It follows a similar plan. You're going to know when you want to use it, but you're not necessarily always going to want to use it. Level 5, Ward of Protection. 1 cost, fast, play when you draw a non-weakness encounter card. Cancel all that card's effects and discard it, then take 1 horror. This is a strong option for most decks as well. This is like commonly what you'll buy when you're done your Shrivelings, if you're only doing Shrivelings. To just be able to like defeat an enemy that you draw is very nice. The reason why this card gets played less in the next cycle, Path to Carcosa, which I'll make a video in the same format in the future. What makes this card, that makes that card better is that it's only 2 experience and it can cancel anybody's card. So just generally in multiplayer, it just caps out better at 2. However, After with playing with the level 5 version, it is still a very, very strong card. So just being able to cancel an enemy is a very powerful effect. Unfortunately, the Survivor class leaves us with a bit of a whimper. With a bit of a whimper. Aquina, 4 cost, 3 experience. Oh, dude, we get it twice? You get it twice and she wasn't even that good? When an enemy attacks you, exhaust Aquina and deal 1 horror to her. Deal that enemy's damage to any enemy at your location. Unfortunately, Aquina is not going to leave the binder. Even more so because you already have one, so it doesn't move the needle at all. That sucks, but what can you do? And then we have try and try again. 2 cost, 3 experience after skill test has failed. If a skill card... I mean, you know what? Let me just give Aquina some conversation for why she's not good. It's kind of like the oops thing, where it's like a perfect world to actually make it happen, right? On her ability, is reads really well, and you can actually make it trigger, but it's kind of like oops, where it's going to trigger less exciting than you want it to. And the big problem is that Peter Sylvester exists. So like, I'll tell you why Aquina isn't like the greatest here. It's because she costs 4, she costs 3 experience. She does soak for 4. You need to deal the horror to deal the damage, so she soaks for, she's not really soaking, it's more like activations of her ability. But Peter Sylvester is just so damn good that it kind of just neutralizes Aquina. Okay, try and try again. After skill test has failed, return a skill. If a skill card you own is committed to that test, exhaust, try and try again. Return that skill card to your hand. So I think this card is actually playable with a limited collection. Mostly just as security, so you're not wasting your cards. I don't think it's great, but I do think it actually, this could leave the binder. Because if you're playing like Overpower, Perceptions, like Guts, Unexpected Courage, if you have like 8 skills in your deck, it doesn't hurt to also then go into try again in the future. So I'm going to put this in the won't move the needle, but I think it's playable with a small collection. Mostly just as security to ensure that you actually like keep the skills that you have. Like if you're going to go into Stroke of Luck, if you're going to go into like Defiance, right? Because once again, the Dunwich Investigators can tap into those. Like as this is mostly for Ashcan Pete. Less so Wendy, but even then Wendy could still use it. But Wendy is definitely less scrappy, especially with lockpicks now in the core. She's less scrappy than Ashcan Pete, who's going to be using try and try again more often. Last but not least, we got Eric's favorite card, the Red Glove Man. 2 cost, 5 experience, fast. After the Red Glove Man enters play, choose 2 of your skills. When the Red Glove Man is in play, raise the base value of each of those skills to 6. At the end of the middle phase, discard the Red Glove Man. Works really well with that chance encounter card that was pointed out earlier. Sorry, 1 second. I have to just finish this point because people are talking about something I don't know, and I'm confused. Yeah, I think he's fine. You have an option to build around him. He gets better as you get more. The chance encounter is kind of fun. The ace in the hole is really nice with like Jenny. You could do some sort of weird build to make that pop off. He's fine though. He's certainly not bad. And I think he's like notably like an okay 5 experience card for you to do some cool stuff with, especially if you're able to tap into this chance encounter. Okay. Oopsie, wrong one. Wrong one, part 2. I got rid of me. So here it is. I'll have an image link to this in the video description, that if you wanted to like save this or check it out on your own. Again, I know a lot of people are going to look at this and be like, man, that's a lot of cards that aren't going to leave the binder. Yes, but there's also a lot of cards that are going to leave your binder. And I think we need to stop focusing on just like these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These 21 cards, and instead look at like, just in this, the 22 plus cards, like in these as well, that are going to actually make an impact on your game as well. The reality is, in card games, there's always going to be cards that are weaker than others, right? But as things go, some of these cards might improve in value, right? Like Hired Muscle is going to go up. Teamwork is going to go up. No, Rise to the Occasion is easily going to go up, right? Like, these are cards that are all going to increase in value as you get more things to play with. When you start playing with Parallel Investigators, you might have a use for Bind Monster and Hypnotic Gaze, right? Like, these are all things that change as things get better. This is looking at just Core and Dunwich and what might change between them. So I'm sorry if I have a hard time sometimes trying to like parse information down for like completely new players. So I hope I did at least somewhat of a good showcase of these cards as they are for just Dunwich and Core. If you want to see more of this for like Carcosa and all that, please let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. Huge thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the stream. Everyone who's watching on Twitch, they're over there on my screen. They're just over there. But thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.